Okay, on to the second song of the Underworld Saga. This is No Longer You. I thought, hey, this is probably where we meet Tiresias, even though what's interesting in how the Underworld Saga is structured is actually we meet Elpenor and Odysseus' mom, and then we meet Tiresias, and then there's a whole slew of other people we just like see and name drop or interact with. A lot of those interactions I mentioned in the previous video. So I'd be curious as to what Monster is about afterwards. But I'm assuming No Longer You is about Tiresias, and that's because the interaction with Odysseus and Tiresias in the Underworld is super interesting. In some ways, it's very specific in that Tiresias very overtly warns him, if you want to get home, you have to control your crew. Like, big thing, you're gonna come to this island where you're gonna find Helios's cattle. Don't touch them. Nobody touch them, nobody slaughter them. If you do that, you guys will all get home and you'll be fine. He goes, but if you touch them, you're all fucked. You're gonna be in so much trouble. And what's also interesting is Tiresias goes on, and to quote from the Fagles translation, he goes, and even if you escape, you'll come home late and come a broken man, all shipmates lost, alone in a stranger's ship, and you will find a world of pain at home. So, I mean, Tiresias basically tells him, you've been fucking cursed because you hurt the Cyclops, aka Poseidon's son. So if you want to get home and get all of your men home alive, here's how you do it. And it goes, and FYI, if they still disobey you and they eat the cattle of the sun, and even if you make it home, you're still in for a world of hurt when you get home. Like, this is not going to be an easy journey for you. And then that's pretty much it. So I look at No Longer You and I think Tiresias, because he says, even if you get home, you're not going to be the same person who's standing here in front of me. And you're not going to go home and find your home exactly the way you left it, which, I mean, I think that would just be a reasonable assumption for anybody. If you're gone for a decade at minimum, you're gonna come back and shit's gonna be different. Even if just a little bit. I know, right, Peg? But let's get into No Longer You and meet who I assume will be the blind prophet Tiresias. I'm curious as to the voice we chose for him, as he is a very old man when he died, and he's still described as old in the Odyssey, but we've already done interesting things with voices like Iolus being played by a female singer, and who knows, I would be so curious if we got an older singer or somebody who can mimic a kind of older, grizzled voice for this. Though maybe that would sound too much like Poseidon and his raspiness, who knows. Oh! Similar to Circe and how she had a common sort of, I guess these would be some sort of almost like minor arpeggios going up and down for her sort of ostinato backing. And we're bringing that again with Tiresias. That's interesting, since I mean, they wouldn't have thought to go see Tiresias if Circe had not said, okay, I mean, I can tell you how to try and, you know, basically get his number down there in the underworld and make him show up. It's gonna be dangerous, but okay. I wonder if that's intentional, or if maybe he just liked the sound. But, like, it's slight similarity to Circe and how her backing percussive, like, elements, it's not quite it, setting the beat, basically, but without using percussion. Using the strings in a kind of ostinato-like manner.
I am the prophet.
Oh, what an interesting voice.
You seek. Time, I've unlocked it. I see past and future running free. There is a world where I help you get home, but that's not a world I know. What?
Interesting. You know, thinking on the Tiresias encounter, while he never says those exact words to him, I mean, Tiresias tells him, hey, this is what to look out for. But he doesn't necessarily help him get home. I mean, most of what he's saying to Odysseus in that moment of, you gotta watch your crew, is a problem that Odysseus has been dealing with the whole time. But another big thing he does say to them, and again, to quote the Fagles translation here, it says, you and your crew may still reach home, suffering all the way, if you only have the power to curb their wild desire and curb your own. So he basically says, it's all on you guys. Like, yeah, I can tell you not to eat the cattle of the sun, which, I mean, he does. which kind of gives away that you're likely going to get to that encounter. So I'd imagine Jorge doesn't want to mention that specifically because it's like, oh, well, then we're just sitting here waiting to reach the cattle of the sun, versus keep that a surprise for later in the narrative, similarly to how we didn't reveal Polyphemus is Poseidon's son, even though it's very explicitly stated in the Odyssey, you know, while they're at the Polyphemus' island. But he makes a note of saying, like, it's human nature that's going to be your downfall. This is a big thing that happens in a lot of the myths, whether it be the Homeric epics or other works by other writers, is that humans are usually at fault for the shit that happens to them. It's human nature. Again, humans sort of ultimately being doomed to fail. In a way, for all of the flaws in the society and everything else in the culture, the Greeks were pretty honest and self-aware about kind of how garbage humans are in general. They definitely took a view even of their heroes. Is why they made their heroes so messy. They're just like, if they're going to be so pumped up doing all this shit, like, the hubris is going to be insane. And in Odysseus, it's his hubris, it's his reliance on his cleverness, it's sometimes a blindness to the human nature around him because he's so in his own head, because his brain is running 6 billion miles a minute. But also, yeah, his hubris is a big thing. And he goes, and your crew and their wild intentions. Again, man, the Odyssey slags on the crew constantly. Though again, we're also hearing this from the mouth of Odysseus. So Odysseus be like, once removed, to be slagging on his crew and how garbage he thought they were, or at least how wild and unruly and everything else they were, which, again, bro, what kind of king are you that your crew is, this unruly? I'm just saying, like, usually crews do not necessarily mutiny against their captain, against their monarch, without reason.
Just a thought.
But so interesting. Tiresias says, there is a world where I help you get home, but that's not a world I know. He could be more explicit in his directions, I guess. Maybe that's what we're referring to, and that we're not going to mention Helios's cattle and all of that specifically. So he's like, there's a world where maybe I give you more explicit directions, which, I mean, even in the Odyssey, he doesn't give them explicit directions all that much. They get more help from Circe than they do from Tiresias. And part of knocking out the second half of the Circe encounter, yes, you remove the burial of Elpenor, but also the part where Circe kind of tells them, okay, here's some things you're going to have to deal with, aka the Sirens and the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis. Like, you're going to have to deal with these things. And she's not even talking to them about the cattle of the sun, which is like her dad's cattle. I mean, Tiresias does help them, but he kind of more just says, check yourself before you wreck yourself. That's like kind of all he tells them. So it's almost amusing to hear him say that. Like, I'm like, well, you know, actually, how much help really was he? I mean, he was helpful, but in the end, Odysseus couldn't stop what happened.
I see a song of past romance. I see the sacrifice of man. I see portrayals of betrayal and a brother's final stand. I see you on the brink of death. I see you try a final breath. I see a man who gets to make it home alive, but it's no longer you.
Yeah, this is a really interesting way to condense a lot of what Tiresias says and make it sound even more vague than it is in the Odyssey. Because part of what Tiresias also tells Odysseus is stuff that, like, okay, again, yeah, if you get home, you're going to find more suffering. You're going to find basically your house under siege. He goes, you're going to have to kill all these people. He goes, and then you're going to have to go and do more stuff, which again, this is stuff that I'd wager we're not going to put into Epic because you want your climax. I mean, the climax of the story, the big catharsis, is the entire section of the slaughter of the suitors. Everything that follows afterwards, and I mean reuniting with Penelope, which I kind of include in that encounter, everything after that, which involves him having to go find his father, he's got to go take like an oar to a place where people have never even heard of the sea, and like he's got to do all this extra stuff basically to ensure he doesn't get any sort of divine retribution or curses put on his bloodline, etc., etc. If you're not going to have that in the story, don't have Tiresias talk about it, but it's an interesting way for him to talk about that. It's like, I see you on the brink of death. I see you draw your final breath. I see a man who gets to make it home alive, but it's no longer you. Again, as he says, goes, even if you make it home, you're going to be a different man and you're going to still find suffering. Like, basically, man, your life sucks till you take back your throne. Bro, you're in for a world of hurt and you thought you were hurting already. But it's a great way to sort of say, I see everything. But again, the core message being, check yourself before you wreck yourself if you want to get home. You can't continue on in the way you're going. You can't let your men continue on in the way they're going if you want to make it home. Preferably alive. I love that. I mean, also this melody is great. This is probably the first song I've really, really connected with since Ruthlessness, which was the first song that really I went, damn. But I like this a lot. I hope it continues to grow. And this voice for Tiresias, very beautiful. It's such an interesting quality. Like, I can tell it's kind of a younger guy who's singing it, but he's the way he is delivering this lines. It sounds like a guy who could be older, who's seen things. And again, Tiresias, that man lived a whole life and a half. So I can imagine this is the part where we're going to have Odysseus sort of like talk back to Tiresias, probably asking for more specifics, because Tiresias be keeping it super vague. He going like full oracle vagueness here. Ooh, the descendings.
We've suffered and sailed through the toughest of hells. Now you tell us our efforts for nothing.
That's not at all what he said. And Odysseus is smart enough to know that. This is something I'm noticing about this portrayal of Odysseus. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Right now, I'm bristling against it. And part of that is there's a naivete that seems to have been put upon Odysseus that doesn't make sense. This man is close to around likely 40 years old. He has lived a life as a Greek warrior and a Greek king. And he's said to be so clever. You think this man does not understand what Tiresias is saying? He absolutely does. And even though, yes, Tiresias gives him some pretty explicit instructions and warns him about it, Odysseus is still powerless ultimately to stop what happens. But he seems to understand what Tiresias is saying. Or if he doesn't explicitly say that he doesn't. He just takes the information and continues on. Odysseus would absolutely understand that when he says, I see a man who gets to make it home alive, but it's no longer you. He's talking about, like, you as the person you are right now. You have to adjust. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. How many times does Odysseus need to be told this in this musical before he finally gets it? Because at this point, we're beating a dead horse at this point. Odysseus would not be this levels of obstinate. He can sometimes be, again, the dumbest smart boy alive, but he would know what Tiresias is telling him, even just with these words. So I don't know how I feel about, again, him having this very combative nature, where I'm like, he doesn't have to sit there and be super grateful, but he would understand what Tiresias is telling him. Like, bro, again, I need to see character development. From what I understand, this saga closes out what would be Act 1. I really need to see character development, because you've had a whole act to start doing it. And if we end Act 1 and he still hasn't, I'll be like, Jorge, what's your pacing? What's your writing? What's the character arc here? Again, I will note, I really do like the guy who's singing for Tiresias. And the descending strings that went down were nice. The do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Just very nice. There's some really great instrumentation going on in this song.
I see your palace covered in
Slaughter of the Suitors.
Faces of men who had long believed you're dead. I see your wife with a man who is haunting.
Haunting and not haunted. Interesting word choice. Yeah.
Who? I see.
Who?
Odysseus is not this dumb.
He would understand what Tiresias is telling him. Like, frankly, Tiresias is being pretty obvious in what he's telling him. I'm a little flummoxed by why we have Odysseus being confused. Because this is really obvious. This is like smashing you over the head with a hammer obvious. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm confused by why Odysseus seems to be so confused. Like, bro, clever Odysseus. Where's the cleverness? Smart boy, you know what this guy is saying. Like, who do you think it is?
My dude.
Oh, hi, Oregon. I sucker for Oregon. And all the descending. Is it piano?
death. I see you.
Siren song, Scylla something, Scylla Cove? Scylla... Ooh, I need to back up because it sounds like the choir is definitely saying something back there, and I want to catch it because what I hear from Tiresias is we're repeating the refrain and like A+ adding organ. Jorge, you added organ, my man. Key to my heart, a really well-used organ. I'm a sucker for a drama organ, okay? Big sucker. Like, don't even talk to me about, like, the Interstellar soundtrack.
Organ.
This choir is definitely saying something, and it would make sense if they're previewing stuff that needs to happen in the narrative. This is Tiresias. He's the prophet. He's telling you the future. Not all of it. He's giving you some hints. Very in line kind of with what he does in the Odyssey. Ooh. Alright, choir, what are you telling me? I definitely heard siren song is what it sounded like, and Scylla something.
Land of brothers' final stand. I see you on the brink of death. I see you try your
Mutiny?
final breath.
Lightning bolt?
I see a man who gets to
Fight
make
Poseidon?
it all alive. But it's not.
Kill all the suitors for something, maybe love? Siren song, Scylla something, mutiny, lightning bolt, something Poseidon. It sounded like fight Poseidon, which is I don't even want to touch that one. Don't even want to touch it. And then sounded like kill all the suitors something, like kill all the suitors for love, for I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like this choir is functioning as like giving the prophecy, if you will, of what the second half needs to be. So yeah, we gotta hit the sirens. Very famous part of the Odyssey. Scylla. Interesting we didn't mention Charybdis, because obviously the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis, like there's a famous phrase that comes out of that, which is between Scylla and Charybdis, kind of between a rock and a hard place, and that you need to make a choice when you go through it. Mutiny, lightning bolt, I'm assuming we're dealing with the Helios's cattle situation there. Not touching the Poseidon one. And then the suitors, slaughtered the suitors. The big catharsis of the story being Odysseus coming home and just like, pulling like a whole nother Troy 2.0 fucking shit up. But that's super interesting. What a great mix, a great layering. You have the choir, it's just indecipherable enough that somebody who's listening might not realize that they're saying stuff. And it was only because I heard that and I was like, siren song, and then I heard that it was like Scylla, and I'm like, that choir's saying shit. They saying something important. I gotta listen. While you have Tiresias on top, going through his refrain again, but you've added the organ? Oh, hail the organ. Oh, wow. This is, I'm not even done with this song. We're not even done yet. Already claiming it as my second favorite song after Ruthlessness. Done. Sealed. You brought in an organ. You've used it well. You've pumped the drama for the... Oh, so good. I want to back that up again. Oh, we love re-listening multiple times.
Land of brothers' final stand. I see you on the brink of death. I see you try your final breath. I see a man who gets to make it all alive. But it's no longer you.
The danger theme again. With brass? Yeah, with brass. Da-na-na-na. We've heard that somewhere before. Excuse me, Tiresias, I was unfamiliar with your game. And I was pretty sure I was familiar with your game. What a cool way to do Tiresias. Again, you win musically, you win points with me for organ and drama choirs and all of it. Like the full operatic level of drama in the big push, final push at the end of the song. Excellent, excellent, excellent. You get my Italian excellent hands. I like this. I like the relative vagueness of Tiresias. Again, he is equal parts vague and explicit in their encounter. He gives them some explicit things to look out for and gives very explicit instructions, sort of, for what to do after you kill the suitors. That stuff you don't need to put in the story because I'm assuming we're not going to do it. If I were taking this and adapting it, I would likely completely nix a lot of that too. Important to the Greeks, especially at the time, and some neat stuff, but ultimately not super important to the narrative. You know, overall, I like a lot of this. The one thing I don't love is Odysseus' reaction to a lot of this. We're taking away the cleverness. The man knows what Tiresias is talking about. As much as Tiresias is being vague, it's really fucking obvious what he's telling him. And as much as I laugh at Odysseus really bad at self-reflection, Tiresias is smacking him over the head with a prophetic hammer here. Or what do people call it? Apollo's dodgeball? Like, come on. He's whacking you in the head with a dodgeball. Like, come on. Odysseus would know better. He would know. He wouldn't be screaming, "Who are you talking about?" He'd be like, "Oh, so I'm gonna go." Oh. It would be better if he were like, "I'm gonna go through shit. But do I have to?" I think that would be a more in-line reaction for Odysseus. Yes, in character as it is in mythology, but I think even in the context of this musical where we've shown he's not good at self-reflection, for him to be like, "Must I though? Or I bet maybe I could get around it," that feels like it'd be a more accurate reaction than him just going, "What are you talking about? Who?" Like, bro, you're not dumb. Knock it off. Maybe saying why would be better. Like, interrogating, why must I do this? I don't know. Yeah, I think that's just what I'd adjust, because that feels more in line, and it feels like it would drive in more that this is about a big character arc for Odysseus. My dude. We should have started the process already. We should be starting the process already. And it's to the detriment of the character if you keep him this goddamn stupid. But yeah, I don't love this sort of willful ignorance that's to a degree that makes no sense for the character, even in the context of the musical. So even stepping outside of source material, this level of willful ignorance, no, my dude. Now, Odysseus bucking against it and saying, "Must I though?" or "Why?" or like, "For what purpose?" and all of this, like, that would make sense, yes, in the context of source material, but also in the context of the musical. And I think it would be more in line with the character and drive that this is about Odysseus needing to try to look at himself and make adjustments. And that's a difficult process. Don't get me wrong. People don't magically overnight start changing. You've also only got X amount of time left in a musical, so you have to speed the process along. So yeah, I think I'm just disagreeing with some of the lyric choices here. But other than that, the vibe is immaculate. The music, spectacular. The voice for Tiresias, excellent. His real big, very round, open belting that he's doing in that last bit, like, fantastic. I love the voice choice. There is a kind of unearthly quality that's like slightly unnerving in the way that it's unearthly. So, which is kind of cool, because eventually we're going to have to also meet the sirens, who are said to have, voices that are so beautiful they lure sailors to their death and what have you. But yeah, no, I love this song. I would like, and this is not even the last song of the saga, which is super interesting. I'd be like, bro, close out Act 1 with this song. Holy shit. That's a stunner, like, closer for an act. But yeah, we'll just have to see what else Jorge's got in store for me with Monster. Wonder what that is. Probably an Odysseus aria. But we'll see.